Welcome to Insight Broadcast. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Rodney Coles, bringing information to our community. And we always got to have a special guest on this show, information you can receive, share with others. And today, we have a guest friend of mine. He's on the show today, Mr. Rabbi Harley. Rabbi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. My last name is Cars Wagman. Nobody likes to handle that, so I get the Rabbi Harley all the time.
It sounds so good when I
I
mention
know.
that. It's
Well,
like
it's kind of like saying Reverend Dr. Rodney Coles.
now
It's a
you're
lot-
really
it's
talking.
a-
That's
it's
not
a
even
lot-
better.
It's a lot of words to say.
Yeah, but you know what? A lot of words will bring you to a lot of levels. That means you got work to do. That's what happens.
Absolutely.
The more work, the more words, the more work. But we want to welcome you to the community broadcast, Insight Broadcast Show, sharing information. And I know that when you first came down there, you had to been here about, is it 3 years now?
Yes.
3 years. 3 years. And one of the things I have learned about you, that you do your research. You find out who is doing it. You're pretty good on that. Who's doing what they're doing in the community. And I'm just going to let it share with you because I remember you say, well, who is this Rodney Coles and this church's outreach network? And I think you couldn't probably get me. You end up getting the wife. And most people try to find it. You can't get. They find her number somewhere, and she made the connection, and we sat there. And you have been with us ever since. So I'm gonna just pass on the baton towards you to tell us about who you are, what you do, and let the floor be yours.
Thank you. One of the things that's changed in my life, I'm still involved in lots of causes, and we can talk about some of those along the way. But that my personal focus, both within my congregation and in the community, is what I call creating holy partnerships, trying to raise the level of human interaction and human connection. It is possible, even in 2019, to do that. I know it sounds countercultural, but what I have found is that people want to get closer to other people. Yeah, we all live with these guys, and we're always stuck with dealing with them, but we can put them aside and don't look at it. Okay, don't look. It's tempting, and yet the more personal the interaction, the easier it then becomes to deal with situations that come up. We first met after a shooting, after a murder. There was a prayer circle to support the family. It was the first day I met you. And unfortunately, there's been others since then for other kinds of shootings. We helped organize the vigil after the shooting at the Pittsburgh Temple last November, and some of the attempted follow-up since then. I hope we don't have to constantly be responding to disasters. I'd rather be a proactive person. But I want to be proactive on causes. Some of my main causes in life are Holocaust education, and we'll talk a bit about the program coming up this Sunday. Domestic violence is something I volunteer for and work on in our community. And just fighting prejudice in general. Supporting Israel. I don't think it will be a surprise to your audience that the rabbis involved in doing that. We can talk about all of those things. They all work well if there is personal connections and personal relationships, and they all tend to fizzle, fall apart, or become very superficial when we don't know each other.
And you're correct on that. One of the things that I always say, a personal touch is always in a preaching word. And one of the things I always talk about communication. You're right. I mean, I saw a little ad, and you made me think about it. I saw an ad about a telephone. And I don't know, every time I'm at a meeting, I don't know what it is at meetings. People pull out their phones, the person talking, you at a banquet there.
I'm sorry. I got a text coming in.
Yep, they got a call.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Those are
Yeah.
things, and they don't understand that that's an interruption. When it's sad when a person tells you at an event, please turn your cell phones off. But I noticed that it's like you're right. That became like a magnet, like you hypnotized or you possessed by the phone, and that's what you see them all day long. I mean, I was in a conference yesterday, and I can't understand. You have your governor talking. What's as important to get on your phone to hear your governor talk about certain things we need to do in North Carolina, and I see people texting like, but yeah, and you're right. I love the idea that you really talked about the communication, because when you came down here 3 years ago, yeah, I think that was a tragedy that we had to meet at. But the thing was to come together in that kind of like wasn't a kind of like vision at that time. That we all held hands, and it was the incident that the young man killed all the family members. The young lady worked at I think called LabCorp, and she worked for the corporation, and we all went there. And I noticed that you really get really involved in the community. And I do like the idea that you really have opened the area for myself to learn more about, about your faith and what your guys doing. I don't realize that you think that I'm helping you or whatever, but you have been really opening the door for me by being with you. So I thank you for that. I really do. And I know that we involved with the interfaith clergy, and we are just workers, and we work to make sure that the job is done. But you do have other things that's happening, and you like to share with us what's happening.
Sure. This Sunday, we are organizing a Holocaust commemoration program. We do this once a year. It's an interfaith program. This year, we're going to be a Sunday at 3 o'clock on March 17th at Peace Presbyterian Church in Winterville. That's actually it's on a street called Guinness, but it's right off of Old Tar and Fire Tower, very easy to get to. And I'm very excited. It seems that every year here I found somebody, some unusual and very insight-filled person to keynote our program. This year we have Professor Eileen Angelini. She is a visiting professor of French. She's a Catholic professor who years ago was researching French literature and based on that became passionate about learning about Holocaust resistors and Holocaust collaborators in France, because France was the country that was probably most divided in Europe between people who worked with the Nazis and people who worked against the Nazis. She's created a film called France Divided. She'll show excerpts from that film. And more than that, she tells personal stories like what we were talking about before. She shows the real people, the real resistors and some of the real collaborators of, who were they, what motivated them. Because if we are trying to draw lessons from the Holocaust to apply today, we need something more than don't hate people, which is certainly important. Don't be aware of the danger of prejudice. That's important. But where do we get the strength to fight back? Where do we get the focus to do that? It actually comes out of love. Is the key to all of it, and you and I know that, and so do most people of faith that are probably listening to this program right now. But it's always in competition with fear. And so she talks very articulately about that, and between her talk and the film, it's wonderful. It just so happens in the last couple days, we've added 2 musical parts to that program. One is there's a classical trio that's going to be playing a piece by Shostakovich that is actually themed on a reaction to World War II, and that has sadness, but also kind of a feeling of uplift. And then a couple days ago, out of nowhere, I got a call from a group called Kol Sasson. Kol is K-O-L, Sasson, S-A-S-S-O-N. It means the voice of happiness. They are the most established Jewish a cappella singing group at the University of Maryland. It's 12 students. They'll be coming down. The group's been around since '97. The students changed every couple of years, and they're coming down here and they're going to perform a couple of musical pieces at our program. They just sang at the Holocaust commemoration for the NSA, the National Security Agency up in D.C. It's kind of amazing to get a group like that just come into town, but Greenville sometimes has that happen for us. So that's Sunday at 3 o'clock at Peace Presbyterian Church in Winterville, and I hope that those who are here will consider joining us for that. Holocaust education, I find, more than any other subject, opens up the most important human issues that we have, particularly the issue of how do you find the strength to resist evil. It also helps you understand where the evil comes from, but if you understand where it comes from, then you can understand how to combat it. Okay, and that's been you've heard sometimes my talks about that along the way. That program partly happened because I spent a little time getting to know Professor Angelini. You get to know, you have to know people to do that. Or Reverend Brent Anderson, who's hosting it. It's the personal connections are just so crucial. And again, because we get into this media world and we get into worrying about numbers too much, how many followers do I have on this or that? It's all superficial. And whereas the holiness, the feeling closer to God and to the highest values that I think God drives us toward, that all those love-related values, that comes from personal interaction, and that's a crucial part of where I'm trying to head in my life, to lower the fear, raise the love, and do that with the people that I see.
Key thing you mentioned is love. Love is one of the most powerful things that we all have, and that is where we gotta connect. You're right. Most times, fear moves them away from love. And fear, they also basically an evilness that they have, and the moving away. To have such an event that you're bringing folks together to speak about that, we still dealing with the areas of prejudice and all our different areas, and that how do we break that? How we break that wall down? You hear, one person want to build up a wall, but how do we break these walls down that continue that goes on in communities? And this is one of my thoughts is it's going to be love is the key of love. It's going to be, you just said it earlier, is going to be communication. How do we communicate? How do we sit down at the table and talk and figure out what is happening? How could we work it? To say, well, we want to make our community better, because it's not the city councilor, it's not the mayor, and it's not the policeman or the commissioner. It's us.
Yeah. No, I want you all to notice he's the one who has mentioned council, mayor, wall. I know what that reference is to. We all do. I'm trying to stay out of the political. Even reference level to do that, but it is that at the same time, we have to be careful. If we are too much just about love and compassion and empathy, all of which we need a whole lot more of, we can also become empathic and appeasing and enabling. For example, besides the Holocaust, another area I work in quite a bit as a volunteer is the world of domestic violence. And when you're dealing with abuse, and by the way, the Nazis are abusers. The Nazis are bigots. The Nazis are bullies. So if you've got bigots, bullies, and abusers, it's all the same dynamic, all the same causes, and all the same in terms of the best ways to confront them. Key is you have to confront. If you're too loving, there's a danger of that, because you can end up enabling all of the abuse. People who were too caring and too loving kind of dismissed Hitler, or they didn't dismiss him, but they backed off and said, well, we just don't want to fight, okay, because we shouldn't fight, we shouldn't combat, like those are bad things to do. And I found in all those areas that's simply encouraging the bully or the bigot or the abuser. Okay, I'm not talking about bigotry. Everybody has a certain level of prejudice. I'm not talking about people whose life is driven and they live by trying to oppress others. If there's oppression going on, we do have to find ways to confront it. It ideally is always nonviolent, and the best we can, but it needs to be mustering forces. Occasionally, it does require violence. In the world of domestic violence, if it wasn't for the police, who are certainly not only bringing the threat of violence, but the reality sometimes of violence, the abuse that is out there would be even more widespread than it is now. Thank God for law enforcement. They've gotten very, very sophisticated in learning more and more about the world of abuse and how widespread it is. It's probably the largest number of police calls they go out on are domestic cases. The largest number of homicides are. It's part of why we're trying to put together a coalition here in town, as there are in over 100 cities around America now have done this, They call them family justice centers. That's maybe a little bit down the road here, but hopefully not too far. And some people call them a homicide reduction center, because when it's effective, it drops the homicide rate in city after city after city, places much larger than us, but also places, towns our size. So that need to confront, but confront with love, is where I try to put my focus, and also try to struggle to do it. It's really tempting when you hear a situation about some woman, and most of the time it's women, being abused, especially physically, by a man, to want to take revenge on the guy, or do something, that's extreme. And we need to obviously hold that back, find ways to be loving and caring to everybody involved, and yet not let that be an excuse to enable or appease the bully, the abuser, and let them come forward.
One of the things you mentioned about prejudice is something that is not, you're not born with it. There's something taught. It's not.
The Anti-Defamation League, that was kind of one of the leading civil rights groups back in the 1960s, put out a film back in the days when a film meant reel to reel, and the film was called "You've Got to Be Taught to Hate." They estimated somewhere around ages 6 to 8 years old is when most people start understanding the differences that they're supposed to pay attention to. Okay, when they're real young, they don't even know. They would look at the two of us, and they wouldn't recognize anything about us that put us into particular categories. Okay, they hit 6 or 8 years old, suddenly we're divided racially. Okay, or we could be divided by gender. We're not divided by gender in terms of appearance, but that's a whole nother world. And what so the reality of the divisions is something we have to deal with. It's the abuse of them that is what we have to fight against.
So when I look at that, the prejudice that goes on, it's going to take love to help move that from people, and that's going to take time. When I look at domestic violence, and I concur with you're saying that, these women as well as men, but these women are really the one that's being violated, and I'm glad that that's a step. And I would say that even myself, really looking at those areas that these females being trapped, being caught up into these relationships, and sometimes they go further on, that it goes further on to can run into human trafficking. One thing leads to another, and I had to, one of the things I say that when I know I've done something wrong, I had to apologize to free myself and get it right. When I know when I got up today, I got one more day to get it right. And I had to apologize to Ms. Jones first, Ms. Joyce Jones, because I felt that, as working in the community and doing things in the community, I ignored these men's, as well as one, but mostly the men's I was standing for, who's been incarcerated, and I just didn't do anything. I know she was doing. And I finally went to her office. I believe you was with me. And then we went there and sat with Ms. Jones. And that's why I was with her yesterday. We was around dealing with domestic violence, dealing with reentry. That was all day yesterday. And and then I had to apologize to Ms. Pam for, Ms. Pam is with human trafficking, because that's another area where, it's going to take the interfaith clergy and other groups to come together. When I said, not into the politicals, I'm not into the political realm, it's that what I really believe that we have a responsibility to help in our community and us to come together. One of the things was said at my round table yesterday, must have been over 600 people there. Well, we try to get the churches and the clergy together. Well, they don't get together. And you know what? And one guy said, well, I can never get them together. And it's just a matter of really seeing that, back to you said at the very beginning, communication.
I have also backed away from worrying too much about who I'm bringing together. I'm more interested in what impact can I have on the people who are suffering. Okay, on the victims of domestic violence, on the victims of human trafficking, the victims of sexual assault. It's all the same. That's an overlapping set of victims, and I don't want to leave out, and the people listening know this. Domestic violence is also perpetrated by women on men. If you think about the fact that the number one weapon for controlling excessively somebody else, which is what this is about. For that abuse, that's what abuse means. It means that you are taking over somebody else's life, and is gossip. It's the most dangerous weapons out there. Gossip is used, unfortunately, on an equal level by both genders. It's games we seem to figure out how to play pretty quickly, and do horrible things to other people by that. So the key is to find ways that are effective to help the people who need the most help. Okay, whether that's done by an organization that has a list on paper of 50 different groups that are there, or it's done by some kind of direct service, that part no longer matters to me. I used to be very interested in getting that list of groups to be put together so it looks like you have this impressive sounding community-wide connection and all the people are behind it and all those kinds of phrases. I want to help the people that need the help, and do that. My focus is fairly local. It doesn't mean I'm opposed to global. I certainly want to help with global help too. Let me throw out a couple other things before we finish up. I don't know what our time's like here.
About 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, one is one of my real passions, and if people out there want to come and talk to me about it too, is Israel, and particularly trying to find ways to make peace. It's a very complicated subject, a very touchy subject, to say the least. We call it a minefield, meaning, almost any word you say could explode along the way. So I'm going to say no words except that the subject is out there, and if people want to come talk to me about it, please do. But to finish, to understand that everything we've talked about so far today is really serious. And very, difficult because of the tragedy, the pain and the suffering that people have experienced to do it. In order for us to find the strength to fight that, sometimes along the way we got to step back and laugh. We got to knock down who we are. We have a Jewish holiday coming up next week. It's called Purim. Purim, Purim, based on the Book of Esther. That many people have read, is all about being crazy. It's actually our end of winter almost holiday. In other words, it's very parallel to St. Patrick's Day, and it usually falls around the same week. Very parallel to Mardi Gras, which, because of calendaring, often is not exactly the same time, but has the same theme. And the idea is we go out and we just go crazy, and we make fun of everything. But in the middle of making fun in Purim, we're still reading the Book of Esther. And the Book of Esther is, at its core, about a man named Haman who plans to commit genocide against the Jews because we won't bow down. So Haman was the Pharaoh who wants everybody to worship him. And when that doesn't happen, he becomes the Hitler who says, you're not going to worship me, we're going to find a way to kill you. And we find that Mordecai in particular and Esther find the strength to fight back, to get to do that. And we somehow have turned that story into an opportunity to put on costumes, get drunk, for those who aren't drinking during the rest of the year, by the way, and to go out and have a joyous, great time. We have to be able to laugh at ourselves. Yeah. We have to recognize the limits of who we are at the same time as we find the power and the strength within us. Again, that's why I work on the Holocaust, domestic violence, Israel, and celebrate these Jewish holidays. It's always great to spend time with you.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on the broadcast. As he mentioned, you have the event on March the 17th. It's going to be at Peace Presbyterian Church
at 3 o'clock,
3 p.m. We are looking for those to show up. And I didn't ask the question: Is there a fee or is it free?
No, this is free.
It's free, so it's no fee for that. Please come out. I would say that we have a friend here that's really looking to reach in the community, and as you heard, that even something they're working on the Justice Center some down the line that they're working on as well, and it's going to really take finding the issue, but you're also going to need people, because if you don't have the right people that surrounded it, then it's a building that's going to fall. So it's important to communicate. Stay off your cell phones in meetings. If you want to test yourself, go to a meeting and count to 20 and look at everybody around, scan around, and watch how many people jump on their cell phones or text themselves. Thank you. God bless. See you at the next broadcast.
Thank you.